Recording in
Okay.
progress. How you doing?
I am good. Thank you so much for doing this with me. I'm so glad to be here chatting with you.
Me too.
How are you?
I'm good. I just finished. I did my back bends this morning, so I'm feeling,
Good for you.
accomplished.
Good.
Yeah,
Yes.
I know. It was so funny. We were talking on Instagram, and I was watching you. I was like, wow, Athena's really heavily in my life right now.
Oh,
It was good.
this is sweet.
I know it was good. How's your weekend going?
It's going fine. I feel like I've accomplished a lot in the weekend, which is nice.
What'd you do?
Well, yesterday I managed to entertain my kids. Well, kids, because the other one is not, he's entertaining himself, but the little one, I took him out, I cooked a meal, I did my training. Yeah. So I
Oh,
was like, oh, yeah.
I got the mom medal today.
Yeah. What about you?
What did I do this weekend? I went out on a date with that guy on Friday night.
Ooh, nice.
Yep. And then yesterday I went to pole, and then both the kids had activities. So all I do is drive them around and give them money. And then actually I went to bed so early last night because I have a big week coming up. Like I'm going to California on tomorrow night for a work trip. So I went to bed at 9. And
Oh,
then,
wow.
yeah. And then today Cole had his first driving class with the instructor. So I've been driving with him every day, but he has to take 6 hours with an actual driving teacher.
Okay.
So he had his first class doing that, and he did good. It was so funny though, because I was like, well, what kind of feedback did the guy give you? And he's like, none. He said, I'm a great driver. I'm like, okay, you are a great driver. I was like, but I guarantee he gave you a piece of feedback. And he was like, well, he did tell me I took this one turn. And I was like, that's what I tell you. But he won't listen. He gets so pissed at me every time I try and give him feedback. He's like, I
So
know.
wait, did you actually finish the 40, was it 40 hours that you were supposed to
No,
spend with?
he has to do 50 hours total. This is his log. And then he has to do 50 hours total. 10 of them have to be at night. And he has to do this 6 hours with an instructor. So
Wow.
he's probably got I would say 12 hours so far, and 2 of them have been at night. But we have a whole year to do it. He won't get his license.
Cool. That's a great way to spend time with your kid.
Oh gosh, I don't know. I always end up fighting,
Of course.
I know. But so are we going to talk about momming and polling, or just momming or dating?
Momming and polling and dating. I thought we would cover
Let's
everything.
cover it all. Um, I do.
And you know what I thought? It's
Um,
funny because I realized that women, I just had this conversation with a student, and we were bouncing from one topic to another. I think women are great at that, just bouncing from, yeah, and I think that that keeps things interesting. So we can totally do that.
yes, I would love to do that. I have to say that video that you put of your little one, Arush is how you say his name?
Yeah.
Of him doing those jumps on your bed was so cute. Like when he was jumping and doing the splits on your bed.
There's another video that I didn't share online, but I shared it in class.
Okay.
Where he drops into a middle splits and hurts his middle area.
Groin. Oh, buddy. Was he crying?
No.
Oh.
He went back and did the split immediately after.
What does the word salto mean?
Salto. It's a salto. Don't you say that in English?
It's like a somersault.
Where you jump and roll.
Somersault is where you tuck and roll forward. Yeah. But also salto means jump in Spanish. And so that's why when you were saying that word, I was like, I wonder what that word, that must mean roll or yeah.
Yeah.
It was so
yeah, okay.
So tell me what your biggest momming challenge is. I'm always interested to know.
I think there are many, right? Oh God, there are so many. And my kids are still quite small, so I guess they're still about to come. But I think it's like trying to be nice, when they haven't done anything bad and you're like having kind of a bad day and you just want to be left alone
Yeah.
and they need your attention, to not just be like, leave me alone, or, like to not dismiss them. That's a big challenge, no?
Yes, I agree. It's having energy for it is very hard, especially when you're having a bad day. Or not even a bad day, just some days I don't feel like doing it. I don't feel like parenting. Like, I mean, I know that probably like people get so like, I'm pretty honest about that. There are just some days and like not even days, like weeks and months. I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I've been doing this for 16 years. And I mean, obviously you can't take that out on them, but I have those.
No.
Yeah.
But honestly, I do take that on them sometimes.
Well, sure. Of
And
course.
yeah, I apologize after, but it's just like sometimes you can't just control yourself. I think the thing is that when you're a parent, like, before you become a parent, you are the most important person in your life.
Yep.
But once you're a parent, like, they
Yeah.
are the most important person in your life. You are not number one anymore. You're behind. You're always a little bit behind, right?
Yep. I agree. And it's so interesting to me because I think that people who aren't parents, you can feel that way about a lot of things in your life, sort of. Like you can get close to it, like with pets or even with like nieces and nephews or whatever, but it's not the same thing. Like I would have told you before I had a child that I loved my dogs like kids, and I do love my dogs, and I did kind of like make them like my children before I had kids, but it doesn't even come close actually, which I know is not
Yeah,
it's not a popular opinion. I know people don't like to hear that, and I'm not diminishing the other things at all, but I'm just saying it is very different when a human being depends on you for everything.
it's the truth, though. It's the truth. And I don't know why it's so bad these days to actually say the truth. Like,
I know.
yes, when you have a child, he's the most important person in your life. And no, it's not like having a pet or a plant.
Or even like nieces and nephews and like people
No.
who are very close with their family. I'm like, yes, but at the end of the day, like when you have a kid, that kid is completely 100% dependent on you for everything. And it's very, and they're different than dogs and cats in that they need a lot more emotional investment.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's also the most beautiful, it's definitely the most beautiful journey.
I agree. I wouldn't change it for the world. I mean,
No.
I find it interesting because I think a lot of people, and I know you and I have talked about this a little bit, so many younger women today don't want to have children or say that they don't have kids. And I'm like, wow, that's so interesting because I always knew that I wanted to be a mom from along like the whole time. And I wonder if some of them are going to get a little bit older and realize that they do want to have kids. Because it is seriously such an amazing like part of being a human and being a woman.
Yeah. Yes.
That's my
Yes.
opinion, and I'm allowed to have
Let
my
me just go and close that door. Well, actually, wait, I'll take you with me.
opinion.
Yes. And also, like, I've heard that many women are doing surgery in order to
Permanent.
not have children
Yeah.
at a very young age. And that's extreme. I would definitely encourage them to not do that, because
It's a big decision. I mean, listen, either way, it is a big decision. It's a big decision to have a child. It is a big decision to do something permanent so you can't have a child because they're both lifelong decisions. That's the thing I always want to say to people is like, I would never say, go have a kid on a whim. You should think about it and make sure that it is what you want, because once you have a child, there's like no turn. You have that child for life. But it's the same with like getting rid of your fertility.
yeah.
The same weight of decision, I would say. Like think about it and really.
But I don't know many women, like, if they're mentally stable, like unless there's something going on like really deep there, I don't know a woman who's regretted having children.
I agree. You would never hear a mother. I mean, I shouldn't say never, but yes, you're right. Unless there was some sort of like mental thing going on.
Exactly.
Yeah, no,
Exactly.
it's so, yeah, I don't ever regret that ever.
No.
Even on the hard days where I'm like, fuck this, I don't want to do this today. I'm like, I love my kids more than anything.
And you have it the hard way, really, because you're like a boss lady. You're badass at your job. You have high responsibility job. You
Mhm.
don't have much help around the kids. So
No,
it's you, it's all on you.
it is. So one thing I would say is pick your partner wisely. I did not do a
Oh,
good
good. That's a hard one there. That's a really hard one.
I know, but I mean, honestly, that to me is the number one thing that you can and should do as a mom is like make sure you pick a good dad to your kids. And it's
It's
hard,
hard.
like you don't know, it's people change too. Like it's I wouldn't have ever thought my ex-husband would have turned out to be like the way he did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you never know. And like sometimes people get sick and die. Like sometimes you get widowed. Like there are lots of circumstances that could make you have to do it all on your own. But like if you can from the beginning, pick a good partner.
That's great. That would be great.
I
I'm
know.
not very good at that either. So
Well,
yeah.
but no, I mean now you have a good partner.
Yeah, I do. Like I do complain a lot about him, but he's good. He's
Right, but
good.
and that's okay. It's also okay to complain about partners the same way we complain about our kids. Because anyone who's in your life that much, there's gonna be frustration. I mean, when you're up in someone's like intimately with someone all the time, you're gonna get annoyed and frustrated with them, even if
Of
you
course.
love them like so much. But they get annoying.
Of course. Of course. It's funny, I was listening to this podcast from Dr. Jordan Peterson, and he was talking about parenthood. And he was like, don't let your kids do things that will make you hate them.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's deep, like that's really deep. And then people go on like, how can you ever hate your child? No, he didn't mean it like that you will hate him, but that will make you roll your eyes at your kid, or
Present
and
them.
it's
Yes.
it's
Well,
true.
for sure, kids can do. I mean, I have teenagers, and let me just tell you that they will not, it's not a possibility. They will do things that make you be like, I don't want to see you ever again. And I haven't even gotten into the worst of it. Like my one girlfriend who has older kids, like she has almost 18-year-old, a 20-year-old, and a 22-year-old. She
Oh
was
wow.
like, she said, listen, all of them are going to do things to the point where you're like, I don't even know who you are. And I'm so angry and upset right now. And then she said too, it was so funny because she was just here the other night and she's like, and then your adult children, because she has kids that are adults now. She's like, their lives are a complete disaster. And all you can do is just sit there and watch and be like, I love you. But like, you want to jump in and be like, what the heck are you doing? But they're in their 20s. And she's like, what can I do? They're fully adults at this point. And but she's like, but they're still behaving. And she was just like, every decade gets a little bit harder than I thought it would be. And I was like, oh goodness. Goodness gracious.
Well, I guess we were the same too, right? I'm sure your
100%.
parents and my granddad were watching us and be like, what an embarrassment. What did I teach you?
Exactly. I mean, I was a hot mess. My parents were horrified. And I now seeing my friend with her adult children, I'm like, it's the same thing, but I have more empathy for my parents hearing it from my friend because I was like, oh, yeah, that would be really hard. Like you do
Mm.
invest all this energy, all this time teaching them right from wrong, and then everyone still has to like go out and find their way in the world. And
Yeah,
it's
you have to find your own way. You definitely have to make mistakes. But I bet there are some mistakes. I mean, I'm sure your friend, she's really annoyed, but it's not the worst of the cases, right? Like there, you can avoid the worst of the cases, and that's already great.
it is. I hope, and that is the thing I will say, like having older kids, it's different than younger kids because like when they're younger, I would be more worried about them getting hurt, you know,
Yeah,
like falling off the bed and hitting their head or
yeah.
like catching a viral illness and like having to go to the hospital because they were sick or whatever. But as teenagers, the consequences of what they do are so much more serious and they can actually impact the rest of their lives. So like with sex and drugs and like school stuff, it's really scary because I'm like, oh gosh.
I
Now,
know. And the worst is that you cannot just like hold on to them and because they have to do their thing, and we have to do our thing too. Like it's not
yeah.
like we can be watching them like a hawk for the whole day long. We got our things to do.
Well, I agree. And it's not healthy to be around to not let them have any freedoms to make decisions. I will say one thing, and I'm curious about if this is like with parents in Serbia, but here, one thing that I have seen is a huge difference is like parents want to be involved in everything, every single thing with their older kids. So like before, like when I was younger, my parents would be like, here, we're dropping you off at practice, or your game is at this time. We might be at your game, we might not be at your game. I didn't ever think anything twice like about it. Here, if you are not at every practice, every game, every like dinner that the team has, like every activity as a parent, it's weird. And I don't want to be at those things.
Oh no.
I have stuff to do.
Yeah, exactly. No, I don't even go to the school meetings for
No,
my eldest. Is it like no? There was even a kindergarten meeting a few weeks ago.
too
And I was
much.
like, I'm not gonna go to a kindergarten meeting. And then I saw one of the moms in the morning when I was dropping my kid, and she was like, oh yeah, like she was telling me about something. I was like, oh really? She was like, yeah, but they said it at the meeting. And she was like, but you didn't come to the meeting. I was like, no, I didn't come to the meeting. She wrote it on the board. It's enough. Like,
Yeah,
it's
I know, but okay, so this is where, okay, I do think that I start to sometimes feel guilty about that stuff because I'm like, should I be there? But then my instinct is like, no,
no.
especially for my older kids. Like they are old enough to relay this information to me. I want them to learn how to extract the important information, interpret it, come home, we could talk about it. But I'm not going to be there forever. Like what happens when they're an adult and they move out of my house and
Yeah.
they have no idea how to listen to what's going on around them and figure out what to do next. I think some of these kids are going to get into college or out of their house if they don't go to college and be like, I have no idea how to like do anything.
Yeah, they'll still be calling their parents to take them to the doctors and stuff like that,
Well,
probably.
that for sure happens here. I
And
don't
yeah, no, crazy.
I don't know if it happens there, but I know like in America that has become a weird thing. And like sometimes parents would be calling up colleges and being like, my son got a D on this class and that's unacceptable. And the college professor would be like, well, they got
What?
the D. Yeah. I was reading this book called How to Raise an Adult, and the army people would call parents would call the army drill sergeants and be like, you're being mean to Tom and he can't, don't. And they're like, you don't seem to understand. When you join the army, you have signed your life over to the US government. Like, I'm not gonna, I can treat your kid any way I want to.
Yeah, no, your kid is not an individual anymore, and
No.
that's why I support mandatory army time, definitely. And I would definitely encourage my kids to go to the army. The eldest already wants to go But here too, it's a social thing. Like here, for example, if an adult, a grown-up man didn't go to the army, he will rarely find a partner, because it's like,
Interesting.
what the hell is wrong with you? Why didn't you go to the army? You know, like,
Interesting. Ooh.
yeah.
Is it mandatory there?
Not at the moment. They're gonna make it again. It used to be, but they stopped it like 10 years ago, and now they're gonna force it again.
Yeah.
But even on the like 20 years ago, for example, you had to have a certain height to go to the army. Or for example, if you had flat feet, you couldn't join the army. And some people couldn't join the army because of that. And they would go to extreme lengths to falsificate uh, a document that they've been to the army, because they wouldn't find a wife.
Interesting. That's so
Yeah.
fascinating. See, it's like very different. I mean, sadly, I would say the sad thing in America is that it's more of a class thing. Like people who are lower class or don't have as many opportunities go to the army, and like middle class to upper class folks, it would be the last thing you would ever do, because your parents
Oh,
can't afford to pay for college and or trade school. And so it's kind of a bummer, because it's definitely considered like a class thing. But so I went to high school with a whole bunch of Israeli people, and they all have to go to the army. And I think,
yeah.
even the girls, I think that
Yeah.
honestly, that 1 year or however long they have to do, I wish that they would do that here, because I think it would humble a lot of people and
Oh,
like
yeah.
make everyone just a little bit more adult.
Yes. And equal, like they do have their rankings. I like to listen to the guys when they're around and they're talking about their time in the army, when they're like, yeah, when you first join the army, you are like not even the black under the nail, you know, you're nothing.
Yep.
And the higher ranks, they just mistreat you, like, but at the same time it breaks them, because they're like these young men of 18, 19 years old who are full of themselves. And
Yeah, the
so
ego.
they get broken there, and they get taught a lot. And I think I support it. I totally support it.
I think it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to have something like that for everyone right out of high school. Because yes, you're there. I'm watching it with my son. My son's a very sweet kid, but their egos are fragile. And then so they like overcompensate by having an inflated sense of like how great they are. And he is great. But I'm like, the world is gonna eat you up and spit you out.
Yeah.
Like you don't know anything. And so you need to like, I want you to be a little tough. Like the first
Yeah.
time someone gets in your face and starts screaming at you or like tells you you didn't do a good job, you cannot fall apart, because that,
No, and you cannot beat them up or answer back. You have to just suck it up and go do it like a man.
or cry or give up or whatever. However, I don't know how he's going to react. I have no idea. But like, yes, you have, and it's like, I would say the same for my daughter too. Like, you have to be able to hear hard things and then pick yourself up and keep moving forward. And to me, that is the hardest part of being a parent in America right now. Because I just feel like the other thing too is like everyone is around what I would call like soft parenting, like the kid's
Oh,
always right and their feelings are always right. And I'm like, hey, I will always listen to what my kids' feelings are, but I am never going to tell them they're right 100% of the time.
exactly. Like there's a big difference. And that's, like you say, the soft parenting type. They're bringing their feelings ahead of their critical thinking. And
Yes.
it's like, you can have your feelings. That's your feelings. Okay. But hey, first critical thinking, and your feelings, they're not as important as what's logic here.
Yes.
Because then it's just a bunch, it will end up in a bunch of grown-up babies who all have different feelings, and
Yes.
nonsense.
That's the thing. Like we can't ever get to it. We will never get to a point where everyone's feelings carry equal weight, because ultimately someone will have to make a decision and it will inevitably hurt someone else's feelings. And I'm, as a mom, I'm like, hey, the best thing I can do is teach you you can acknowledge your feelings. You can learn how to describe your feelings. You can feel empowered to talk about your feelings, but you will not act like a jerk if your feelings get hurt because of a decision that got made, like from someone who's in a position to make a decision. Like, so
Exactly.
for instance, this week, Charlotte's grades slipped. And I was like, no way, girlfriend, because she's way too smart for that. And she's been like, she's fully in like the teen girl. I'm so great. I'm blah, blah, blah. And so I just reduced her privileges. I took her phone away at nighttime. I told no friends after school until you get your grades back up. Well, she went into school the next day and like handed in 3 or 4 assignments and redid some assignments. She got her grades all back up. She was like, "You're mean. That really hurt my feelings." And I said, "Well, you're right. I am mean. You're right. I am mean." I was like, "But I am your mother. I pay for your phone. I pay for this house. And my standards and requirements are that you have A's and B's. That's just the way it goes."
Exactly.
And I was like, "So you can think I'm mean all you want, girl, but that's the way life is."
Yeah, but you're mean, but her grades did go up.
Well,
So
right.
she can thank you later, because her feelings, they will calm down.
The feelings are very fleeting, like they come and go. And that's the other thing about like this, all making things all about people's feelings. I'm like, they're so transitory. Like I could feel pissed off today and then tomorrow I could be totally fine. So if I make a decision based on me being pissed off, that's not always the best outcome.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. And I just think I worry that we're going to have like a group of people that think that their feelings are the most important, their individual feelings are the most important things in the world.
Yes, there is a rise of young adults who are completely incompetent. And that you can see it. Like here, it hasn't come to that yet. Although we always say here, whatever happens in America, it's just like it will come, like when you see the number of people who get good grades at university, it's like they're making it easier for people to pass, and it's like, why in the world would you make it easier for people to graduate? You graduate if you're good.
Right. Well, no, because of this thing of like that everyone should be passing versus like you need to raise your standards and try harder. That's there has been a shift. I agree with you. And I don't,
There is.
yeah, I mean, even with like the schoolwork here that they do, I'm like, they've definitely like dumbed things down so that more people can pass. And it worries me because I'm like, what's going to happen when we need people who are engineers or doctors?
I know it is scary. I like to watch those things when somebody goes around in the street and asks
Yeah.
young graduates questions.
Yeah.
They don't know shit,
I know.
but they're graduates. And it's like, that's kind of, I don't know how many continents is on the earth. Like, you should know that.
I know, but they don't teach geography anymore. Here's the thing that has shocked the shit out of me about my kids' schools, especially when COVID was happening and they were here and school was happening while I was working. We were all together all day. I got to see the curriculum and I was like, what the hell happened in the last 30 years since I was in school? They don't teach basics anymore. They don't teach geography. They don't teach spelling and grammar. The new math stuff is so complex and hard to understand. I'm like, this is part of math is not hard. Addition and subtraction and multiplication, they can just memorize it. And they should just memorize it so that
Yes.
they can use their brains for the more complicated stuff like algebra and geometry and trigonometry and calculus. I was like, you're making it way too hard. But if you dare say anything, everyone's like, oh, you're just old. And I'm
You're
like,
just, oh,
I was like, well, if it wasn't broken, I don't understand why we changed this.
there is this saying, I don't know who said that, but it's true. It says, hard times make good people, and then good people make good times, and good times make bad people, and bad people make bad times.
Yeah.
which make good people, so it's like the cycle. We'll have to.
Yes, no, I agree with that. I think about like my grandparents who lived through well, my one grandma lived through the Great Depression, and then my other grandparents lived through she was older than them, and then my dad's parents lived through World War II. And like,
Mhm.
all the stuff they had to do in World War II, and even the stuff my grandma had to do during the Great Depression, like it made them tough and practical and like frugal and
Mhm.
hardworking. And then I look at people today, I'm like, we would fall apart if we had to like ration meat or ration anything, because like
Yes.
this idea that no sacrifice or whatever, like I deserve blah blah. I'm like, yes, everyone is deserving of good things, but sometimes you have to make sacrifices. and
Yes.
that to me is like, I really try very hard to teach my kids about how lucky they are, because I personally have seen poverty at I think, a different scale than a lot of other American people I've ever seen. And I'm like, you guys don't even have any clue how good you have it. Not even close. Like, there's nothing you've seen that could let you know that. But it's hard without going and having those experiences. I don't think they'll ever get it.
No, no, they won't. But that's the unfortunate, is that it looks like these times will show up again,
I,
because it's just the truth. My granddad, he's the one who raised me, and he fought 6 years in World War II. And he was telling me all these stories, like during the 18 years I lived with him, like all these stories. And it's just like they're coming back to me, and it's like, oh, yes.
yes, you're like, because when you're younger, you just like, no, they're just talking and you
Wow.
don't have context for it. And then you get older and you start seeing things repeating, and you're like,
Yes.
that is what they were talking about.
Yes, exactly. It's like all these old man's tales that are not old school at all. Like, for example, he was telling me how before such big crisis, like money starts losing all its value.
Yes. Yes.
Like money becomes completely unimportant, and it's like, and I remember when I was young, like we had, how do you call it, like, this spare room, like in the house. I used to make fun of him because it was like a shop, girl. It was like we had a shop in our house. It was filled with like powder milk and paper towels and,
Yeah.
and sardines and all that. And if you needed paper towels, you couldn't get it from there. You had to, if there was no more in the house, you had to go out and buy it, because this is like war stock. And I was like, oh, come on, it's over. And he's like, don't be too sure about that.
Yeah. That is so, it is very interesting to me. Well, we saw that with COVID a little bit. I mean, people that didn't have like, I always keep enough food at the house that if like the shit hit the fan, we could eat for like a month at least and be fine. But like some people I realize don't keep any extra provisions in their home. And I'm like, what would happen if like the power went out for 2 weeks and
Yeah.
or there was some sort of natural disaster and you had no food to like feed your children? But that, I also think some of this goes back to lack of, like, we don't teach stuff like this in school anymore either. Like common sense stuff. It's all this like new math and stuff that I don't think is bad. Like I think my kids take stuff called social emotional learning, and they learn about compassion and empathy. And I'm like, hey, those things are great. But
Cool. Yeah.
I don't think we should take out some of these other things, like teaching people practical life skills, like how to cook, how to like do basic financial stuff. Like we could have both, I guess is my point.
Absolutely.
And I just think that's the part that worries me a lot about raising children right now in this environment, is it's skewed so heavily in that direction that if you even do anything that's in the middle, you're labeled as extreme. And I'm like, I'm a pretty even keel like person, and I can see both, like all the sides. I just don't think
Yes.
anything should ever be weighted so heavily on one side or the other. Like I'm trying to make my kids well-rounded.
Yes. And even this extreme, like all of a sudden, it's so, you see everybody, for example, on social media, everybody's talking about compassion and empathy and da 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 da, which it's nice when you talk about it on social media, but come on, like if a real crisis hits you, you're
Yeah.
not going to be compassionate about your, no, you're going to be compassionate about your own household.
Yes.
You're not going to be this, you know, we're not Rockefeller here to take care of the whole planet.
Well,
So
and you can't even like when COVID happened, I was like, hey, my job is to take care of my household. Like I just have to do my best to take care of my own household. And I understand that not everyone has equal resourcing and like people are going to need help. But I was like, it is ultimately my responsibility to take care of these kids. And I learned big time that the government really could give a shit if we were okay or not, because they, canceled school, which was like the worst possible thing that could have happened for the amount of time that they canceled school.
hmm,
I was fine with like at the beginning when we didn't really know a lot. I was like, okay, cool. A month or two, fine. But then for like a year after that, I was just like, these kids, this is so detrimental to their mental health and to their education and like to working parents and all parents. And I was like, the government doesn't care at the end of the day
no,
about my individual family. Like I'm the only one who's really looking out for us. And so this idea that I love being compassionate personally, and I choose it whenever I can, but no one is going to come save me. I was like, so I got to
no.
do what I got to do to feed my kids and make sure they're safe and healthy and blah. And I do think that we've just like this idea that somehow someone else is going to come save you is like pervasive. And I'm like, nope. At the end of the day, you're still responsible for yourself. Again, I know that's
Absolutely.
a popular opinion, but I'm like, it's the truth.
I'm all for the unpopular opinions anyway. I remember I was demonized because here during the lockdowns, it was like, except if you have a dog, you're allowed to walk it. And they were like, if your dog is this age, you can walk it more times a day. And I mean, my dog is 6. She was 6 at that time, but I was just like, I'm going to pretend that she's 15.
Yeah.
And every time I would take her out to walk her, I would be like, come on, kids, let's go out. Take your bicycles. Let's go to the park. You know, like I cannot have these kids locked into the house. I don't care anymore.
It was so the mental health stuff from that, I don't think we've even seen like close to the effects it's gonna like it's a whole generation of people that I think it's gonna probably take 10 years to understand what that did to them. Not being
It's weird. It's weird. You know, of babies who were born in the pandemic,
yeah.
they are scared of people's faces.
So my sister has little kids and her kids were born during little and born during the pandemic. And the preschool teachers said we've had more behavioral issues than we've ever had before, and it's like them not seeing faces during that period of time, it does something to their brains that you can never undo, because that's how babies learn, is by watching expressions
Yeah,
and like it's a window of development in a human lifespan that you can actually never get back again. And so there are some kids that really suffered from what happened and will suffer their entire lives because they missed that developmental stage. And I'm like,
absolutely.
that's scary.
It is very scary. I
I
was
know.
always freaked out. I mean, I've never hidden that. I've always liked to even post of how I was anti-mask and still am. And it freaked me out. Like going out in the bus with all these people with their masks on, it's scary. It's scary and it's not okay.
It is scary. I remember just feeling like tense the whole time. And like I'm an adult who knows how to regulate my own moods and emotions. I can't even imagine what kids really were thinking, like in the back of their heads. I do remember at one point my son, because he was in sixth and seventh when it was the worst. And at one point at the beginning of 7th grade, he was like, do you think we're gonna have to wear masks for the rest of our lives? Like Imagine their little heads. Like it's terrible. Like he thought that. And I was like, no, buddy, there's no possible, but that's how kids' minds work. And the
Yeah,
anxiety that probably was causing them, it's scary.
very.
Yeah, I don't know. But I'm just glad it's over-ish until the next crisis comes.
Yeah, we're gonna survive that too. I remember when we had this issue, my eldest, he was complaining about wearing masks at school. He was like, I don't want to wear the masks. And I was like,
Yeah.
don't wear it.
Yeah.
Don't wear it. I always like to push people's buttons anyway. I couldn't wait for the teachers to call me, and
Yeah.
it happened. And I was like, look, you don't even have soap in the toilets.
I
So
remember you saying that.
you don't
Yeah.
have soap for the kids to wash their hands after they go to the toilet, and you pretend that you're here caring about hygiene. Please leave my kid alone. Or like Pink Floyd said, leave the kids alone, okay?
True. Well, and I mean, like, the one thing that I love science. I think science is so amazing. And I was like, from the beginning, the kids were not, even if they caught it, the outcomes were most very favorable for the children. And I was
Of
like,
course.
oh, so fine. And then they're like, well, what about teachers that are elderly or have immunocompromised? I said, okay, pay them their full salary. Get all these young kids that are just out of college that want to be teachers, like in their 20s, because nothing bad's happening to them.
Exactly.
Let them be teachers. It would be cheaper to continue to pay our older workforce to stay home and to get these younger kids to be
Yeah.
and keep the kids in school. I was like, there are solutions to any problem if we get out of our like black and white mindset of how things.
And when was it ever that you're going to compromise children in order to protect the elderly? Like that's completely,
Well, I mean,
that's
and
degenerate.
if you ask a lot of elderly people, they would be like, no, like practically speaking, I have fewer years left on earth. And they have a lot more. Like my dad was really pragmatic about it because he was like, no, we're getting together for family stuff. And
Of course.
I was nervous though, because I'm like, Dad, what if we get you sick? And he was like, if I die because I was hanging out with my grandchildren, he's like, I die a happy man. And I'm like, okay,
That's a good thing.
yeah.
That's a good thing. That's way better than locking yourself, not seeing anybody, and dying of
Well,
loneliness. I mean, that's,
that
yeah,
that was happening. So it was really interesting. I read that article that so once they stopped allowing visitors into the nursing homes, people who had like dementia or some of that, a touch of it, it progressed so rapidly that they died of that. And I'm like, so
of course.
we just sentenced a whole bunch of people who probably would have had like 2 years of good enough life left to a horrible last 8 months of their life because we were worried about them catching the virus and dying. And I'm like, the trade-off didn't make sense at a certain point.
Not at all. Not at all.
I'm like, it doesn't, we always make cost benefit analysis of these things. And I was like, we lost our minds completely on that and just decided to be like,
Completely.
yeah,
For me, it's always about, like, literally, it's always about the kids. Like,
yes,
I'm nearly half my life, like maybe I'll have more than half, but and it's always about the kids. And it's like, I'm going to compromise my kids' mental health and their physical health, because who knows what all these masks and antibacterial is going to do to your immune system anyway when you're growing up, to save the elderly.
yeah,
Like, that's completely degenerate, but that's insane, because if you say anything about that, you're immediately like,
a grandma
I don't
killer.
know.
You're a grandma killer. Well, that's what was our joke. That became our joke at the pole studio. They were like, if you're not seen wearing your mask, you're labeled a grandma killer. And I was like, I know. But I can tell you, like, I agree with you. To me, these are the people that have more life left on earth than the rest of
Yeah.
us. We should always be investing our resources in our children, like individually and collectively. And this, we did not do right by them with the whole COVID
And
thing.
I'm going to say something very unpopular now. But you know, like how we're talking about the softness of raising the kids. So what? We taught them to behave like little bitches, you know, like literally, it's like, oh, protect yourself. You
Yeah,
don't go visit your grandma. Don't go visit. Oh, your mom is sick. She's gonna be locked in the other room and you're not gonna see your mom. Like,
yeah,
where did the world go before when somebody was hit sick? People like here, if you're sick, your friends will come and
take
bring you soup and hang out with you, you know, like who
yeah.
cares? But no, like all of a sudden it's like, ooh, stay away from me.
There was, I agree with you that even before COVID, I wouldn't have thought twice about if someone was sick. I would be like, oh, I'm going to come over and bring you something, or what do you need? But then COVID hit, and if you acted like that, people were like, what's wrong with you? You're supposed to stay, like, we need to stay away from each other. And I was like, yeah, but we have to help each other too. It was funny because the flu pandemic of 1918 or whatever, the Spanish flu, one of my great uncles died. And my mom loves to tell this story. It was her aunt, her dad, my grandfather's sister, like was caring for their brother, and he died of the flu. And she like washed his body, put his suit on him, sat him on the front porch for the undertaker to come take him. And I'm like, wasn't like Aunt Goldie scared? And my mom was like, no, people back then didn't think twice about it. They just cared for the sick.
Exactly.
But a lot of people died during that pandemic because when no one would go check on them, they died of hunger or thirst or other like subsequent things, not the flu itself. And that's the thing. Like, we have to be able to help each other and be brave enough to like go in and help each other. And I do think
Exactly.
this made us all a little scared of helping each other.
That's the thing. Like, and then they're teaching their virtue signaling compassion. But it's like you wouldn't even have gone and seen your grandma when she was sick. What are you talking about? This is not compassion. This
No,
is
it's true. It's so true. Like,
I
yeah,
love how we went into this topic.
I
Like
know.
now we're
I know, but this topic is a mom topic. I have never felt more outraged about parenting than I felt when I was parenting during the pandemic, because I
yeah,
was like, man, no one gives a shit about kids and families, really. I'm like,
no,
people can talk about it all day long and say like the left is this or the right is this about families. I was like, hey, I'm going to take politics out of this for all you guys. None of you guys give a shit about parents and children.
yeah.
Because if you did, we would have handled the pandemic completely differently.
It was just so weird here. Like here, we don't really have left or right, or you know, but like it was incredible when first it hit the pandemic. There is this video of our president in a press conference who was laughing at COVID. He
Oh,
was like, you know, they were like, oh, what do you think about this pandemic from China? And he laughed and he was like, well, we survived the war. We survived all these wars. What is this little virus? Ha ha ha. And he was laughing. And then 2 weeks later, it's like somebody spanked him on his fingers for saying that. And he was like, you have to social distance and isolate. And it's like, what's going on? 2 weeks ago, you were laughing about that.
I know. Well, the tone in all of the leaders changed like that. Like, I think everyone was kind of like, oh, what is this? And then that changed big time. And and then everyone followed suit. I think that was the one thing that scared me the most, was like watching everyone just basically like watching society decide together that it was okay
Mm,
to completely shut down.
yes,
That's the part that
yes.
freaks me out. I'm like, wow, it's not that hard to manipulate us to do. And I mean, I know COVID's real. I know people died from it. I'm not diminishing that at all. But I'm just saying, like, watching that happen real time in my lifetime, I was like, if this could happen and we would shut down society, what else would get us to shut down society? Within 2 weeks. It was like within 2 weeks. It was crazy.
It's crazy. And then people are still wondering like how people like Hitler and Stalin got to power. And it's like,
I guess
there you
that's,
go.
you can see it. I had never seen it in my lifetime that dramatically. And so when people tell you stories like that, you're like, oh, I just don't understand how that could ever happen. Like, how
Mm,
could all of a sudden people that you know are good, normal, like loving family people be like, yeah, we're going to accept this crazy person who thinks it's okay to do X, Y, and Z and as our leader. And I'm like, oh, I totally see how that could happen.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's fascinating. The I like to call it the sheep society, but that's really what it is.
Yes,
It is
well,
what it is.
it is. And also, like, there's danger in sticking out and
Oh
saying,
yeah.
right? Like, and I can see how when you have children and your number one goal is to keep them safe, there's something about like falling into line and just doing what everyone says, because then you're not going to stick out too much and then your family will be safe. And so, like, it's dangerous to be the one who's like, what are we doing?
It
Why?
is.
You know what I mean? Because then you're branded as crazy. And in some countries, you'll get arrested or like hurt.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And that's,
It was insane times, absolutely. Like how the countries they were willing to let their economy, like when was, oh how does a country allow its economy to flop like that? Why? It's just like, and it was really annoying when I was talking with people, and I accept both views. Like I have friends who are vaccinated, I have friends who are not vaccinated. We're all cool. I'm not vaccinated. My vaccinated friends are not afraid to be around me,
oh,
don't consider me as a threat, you know. But the amount of people who do, I lost clients because of my vax status. They said they didn't trust my judgment, and I was like, okay, all right, fine by me. But it's like the programming was insane.
yes, yes. And I don't like, I was always like, hey, these are really highly personal decisions. And everyone, I believe in body autonomy always. Like it is always your choice to do with your body what you want to do. Whatever my opinion is, doesn't really matter. And
Yeah.
the idea that people, we were like shunning people because they were making private medical decisions. I'm like, do you not see the irony in this?
Yes.
There's a lot of irony here. And I just,
Especially with a few months later in America, the abortion law that was passed.
oh,
And
well,
then
yes, that's my
all
irony.
of a sudden, so many of these people who were demonizing the unvaccinated, they were like, my body, my choice. But it's like, yes, your body, your choice. I totally agree
Well,
with
can you
that.
hold, Athena, hold on 1 second. This guy's here to help me put in a light. I'm just gonna get him started. Give me 1 second.
Of course. Okay, so Jamie is gone to help her handyman. So I'll continue talking just so that you're not bored. Yeah, I know this discussion has gone a little bit political, even if you no, it's not really political, it's just different points of views, but it's definitely part of motherhood, like to see society change. I guess if you don't have children, you don't really care too much about seeing society change. But when you do have children and you wonder like, well, what's going to happen in 20 years? If this is happening now, what's going to happen in 20 years? That's worrying. And that's why I appreciate Jamie so much, because she manages to do her mom work all by herself with two teenagers and drive them around and be at their games and host friends parties at home. Oh,
I'm back.
oh, I was just criticizing you while you were gone.
What are
No,
you
I'm
saying?
kidding.
No, it's okay. It's okay to criticize me.
No, I'm kidding. I was saying how we might have gone a little bit maybe political, although it's not political, but I was saying how it is a part of motherhood. And I was saying, especially for people like you who manage everything just by yourself, like
Yeah.
driving your kids around and hosting sleepovers and
Well, but I mean, so here's the reason why I think it's important. Moms can only be as successful as it's like a fish in a pond. So like if you're in a healthy pond, it's easier to have like your little fish life. But the nature of the pond that you're in actually like determines a lot of stuff around parenting, more than I thought it ever would. I mean, obviously a lot of decisions are personal in your home, and those you always have control over. But I learned big time, like with the COVID thing, about the pond fish stuff. Cause I was like, wow, I can't save my kids from any of this. Like school just stopped and there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
And that's the part where I was like, I have to be like more involved. It was the first time in my life ever that I went to a political protest during COVID about to get them to reopen the schools. And I did it multiple times. And I was just like, wow, like you really do. And I'm lucky. I live in America and I know that in other countries, like a lot of stuff goes on that moms don't have any control over. And they still want the best,
No,
and they want the best for their kids just like I do. And I'm like, you have to make sure that you're staying politically or like you know what's going on so that you can navigate your family through it, I guess is the point.
absolutely. And that's what's so wrong with this society is that moms are, and they're getting more and more diminished.
Yes.
Motherhood is getting more and more diminished. But then
Motherhood.
when you look in the past, like in the past societies, in tribes, mothers were always the main figure of every society and tribe. And in religion, in every religion, the mom with the baby is always the main figure.
Yep.
And it's like, how have we got to the point where moms are literally like, I mean, they're literally telling us now that if you have kids, you don't care about the planet. It's
Right.
like, wait a second. Wait a second. Who is this planet for after all? Like, wait a second. You know, like motherhood has become so it that really angers me.
Yes, I agree with you there. I mean, the diminishing of motherhood, the listen, it is like, and I know that this gets into a lot of topics where people have very polarized opinions, but the act of creating a human being, growing them inside of you, birthing them is the most profound experience that you can have. Like, no, I don't know what, there are no words to describe it. I don't even know how you talk about it. And it just gets like as this throwaway thing or something to look down on, or that moms aren't smart, or that moms don't understand what's going on around them. I'm like, there is no one on earth who's more has their shit together more than moms. because
Yeah.
because we have to do so many things to keep everything okay. And the fact that it has become this negative thing is very sad to me, because you're right.
That really angers me. That pisses me off.
It used to be the thing that was celebrated in religion, society. It is now like, well, that's stupid, or like, I would never do that. And I'm like, okay, that's fine, but we are raising the next generation of people. That's pretty important.
Yes.
If you
Yes.
want,
We are raising, yes, the people who will take care of us at the end of the day.
yes, and even if you want to bring the environmental, like climate stuff into it or whatever, like these are the kids who are going to have to solve that problem for the rest of us. So you better hope we're doing a good job.
You better encourage us.
I know it's hard, but I wouldn't change it for the world. I love being a mom. I love it.
Yeah. I love it too.
And I mean, I'm done having kids, but I'm excited to see what happens next with my kids, because who knows?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And aren't you excited to become a grandma
Oh my God.
someday? Like
I can't wait to become that to me is going to be the best job ever. I can't wait. Well, because my one girlfriend is a grandmother, the one who has the older kids. And she was like, it is the best. Being a grandmother is the absolute best.
it is the ultimate love is the love of the grandparents.
Because you can just love on them and then not discipline them and then be like, okay, go back to your parents now.
Oh, I see, because I live with my mother-in-law, and she's an amazing woman. Like really, she is the mom of the house, really.
Right.
I am so lucky to have her. She is the mom of the house. And the way even if my eldest is not her grandchild,
Mm-hmm.
she sleeps with him in the room. I mean, it's her grandchild as well. And the way she is around those kids, like she would give her eyeball for them, you know, and then the second eyeball as well. And whenever like me or my partner, we like discipline our kids, I think she would murder us with her eyesight if she could, you know. It's like, how dare you, you know?
Don't yell
she
at my
storms
children.
she storms out of the house dramatically. She is very annoyed. I'm like, I really want to experience that.
Yes. Yes. Well, and I just like, I had such a close relationship with my grandmother, both of my grandmothers, but my dad's mother in particular, because I was her first grandchild and she and I had very similar temperaments. And so she and I like had a very strong bond. And she would always like, being a grandma is the best thing ever, ever. And I'm like, I can't wait for that. It's just going to be so fun. I mean, I can wait. I always tell my kids, I'm like, you guys should like enjoy your 20s and like have some fun and then have kids. Like there's no rush. You don't need a rush to have kids. Like you should have fun first. But I definitely want them. I was like, if I don't get one grandkid out of this, I'm gonna be pissed.
No, you will get at least one. You know what? We joke sometimes with Marco. Oh my God. We joke a lot and we're like, what if they end up to like our sons? What if they're gay, you know? And then we're like, they can be whatever they want, but they will give us a grandchild.
Yeah,
it's like,
totally.
give me a grandchild and go live your life, but give me the grandchild, okay?
But I mean, luckily in today's society, you know, gay couples can have babies. Right. Like it doesn't mean that you can't have it. It might make it a little harder, but I'm like, yes, do what you want to do. But I want one grandbaby.
But I raised you all these years. It's not for free. Give me
yes,
the damn grandbaby.
that's what I said. I agree with that. I'm super psyched to be a grandma, but well, anyway, I probably should go pretty soon because this guy's here putting my light in. But I feel like we talked about a lot of good motherhood topics.
We did, and next time, next time we should do one about mom and polling, because today we went through, but it was great. I loved it.
It was good, and yeah, we should do mom and polling because I have a lot to say about that.
I am very excited. Oh, thank you, Jamie, for this.
Oh, this was so much fun. Okay, I will clean it up and send it to you. Mwah. I love you, darling. I hope you have a good evening.
Love you.
Okay, I'll talk to you.
Thank you for listening to us. Bye, babe.
Thank you guys so much. Okay, bye.